This is Dave Ward from the Ward Law Firm, and I help protect the business owner who's facing divorce. And in this series, we're talking about the 3 questions I am asked most frequently, as well as the 4 questions that people should be asking when they sit down with an attorney. Right now, we are on question number 2. And question number 2 is, what is the difference between a divorce and an annulment? Frequently, when people contact my office, I am first asked questions about whether or not they can get an annulment, because there is a perception that an annulment is better than a divorce. And in some respects, it can be, usually for religious reasons, but the difference between a divorce and an annulment has to do with what it is the court is actually deciding. In the case of a divorce, the court is ruling that a valid marriage is going to be dissolved, and the parties are going to be treated as though they're no longer bound by the bonds of marriage. So that's a divorce. An annulment, by contrast, is a determination by the court that that a divorce isn't necessary because the marriage itself never actually existed. In other words, it was void right from the beginning. And some of the grounds for that we talked about a little bit in our first video, because they can be both grounds for a divorce or an annulment. And the best example would be a marriage that is procured through fraud upon one of the parties. In that case, fraud, as a general rule, is a defense in a case that involves a contract. And marriage is treated by the law as a contract between the 2 parties. So that can actually be one of the grounds to assert for an annulment, if that's what it is you're choosing to seek. As a practical matter, it is interesting to note that Georgia, like virtually all other states, does not favor annulments. And the court is going to view a request for an annulment with a very, very skeptical eye. And there are reasons for that. And there are actually even circumstances where you can't get an annulment even if you otherwise qualify. And the example of that is if children were born during the course of the period of time that the parties thought they were married, even if it turns out that marriage was void for some technical reason, or procured through fraud, etc., the state of Georgia is not going to allow that to be treated as an annulment. They're going to require that you go through the divorce process. So that is some of the differences. There are many, many more differences between a divorce and an annulment, but the big overarching one has to do with what it was that the court's deciding. That is, are we dissolving an otherwise valid marriage, or are we making a declaration that no marriage ever actually existed? Again, I'm David Ward from the Ward Law Firm, and I help protect the small business owner in divorce.